The myth of actual guilty people continuously professing their innocence hides the truth when innocent people continue to profess their innocence. Hello, it's May 2022. I want to do a real brief video on a myth that I have addressed mentioning in previous videos over the years, and I believe one or two videos relatively recently. And that myth is how actual guilty people will proclaim their innocence after they are found guilty, especially when they are incarcerated. A lot of people believe, whatever you want to call it, that guilty people will always proclaim their innocence forever. And that is wrong. Now, I was going to do a real quick recap. In my younger years, in the early to mid-90s, I did work for the Ministry of Correctional Services for a time, not as a CO or anything, more with the psychology department, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And everyone should know that I did practice law as agent. I had placement and offers prosecuting, etc. So, and I also worked in the mental health industry. So I have all these different professional perspectives. And I'm sure we all know somebody who committed crimes, actually guilty, and we know stories about that. For some reason, this urban legend, this myth that guilty people will always continue to proclaim their innocence is false. Now, for some reason, and I've talked about this in previous videos, many of criminal types, we'll call it as a descriptive, and I'm not saying this condescendingly, they take pride, they wear what they've done and their punishment as a badge of honor, and mainstream society really is unaware of that. So if they've done something, sure, they will try to minimize, or you can call it damage control, what they've done, but they will still wear that as a badge of honor and openly admit it. They may not necessarily admit it in a superficial conversation or whatever, or maybe even I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but they will admit it and they will wear that as a badge of honor, because in that subculture, that's what it is. Now, I was going to emphasize, for example, with my case, it's not just me stating that I'm innocent. I've shown, for example, screenshots, a plethora of screenshots from the trial transcripts for the alleged assaulting police officer and alleged obstruction, where even the two former officers who were fired over all this testified. And when you read, and you don't always have to read between the lines, but when you read through it, they say that. And when you also start looking at, for example, why they needed me convicted, because the Crown prosecutor had let the trial judge know during the trial that I was suing the city of Calgary, chief of police, the two officers, etc., during the trial. Now, I'm not going to get into what should have happened as a result of that, but he asked me, letting the judge know, and I show screenshots of that as well. I've shown a plethora of evidence, and even the backstory to that with regards to the female, and as well as my first-hand knowledge, whistleblowing and exposing about the sexual abuse or sex trafficking of these vulnerable women within the mental health industry, and my implicating Alberta Health Services with all that. And I've stated many times, I'm pretty sure they knew before what I know they know, because I told them. And right after, it got leaked, which was supposed to be confidential, but it got leaked out. Anyway, so really I just wanted to focus on real guilty people. Even if it's a mistake that they've made, they're not even committing crimes, is not a common thing for them. They're not part of that subculture. They make a mistake. People, real guilty people, will admit it. Now, we hear about people proclaiming their innocence right through, say, for example, a life sentence. No one bats an eye. Oh, the person is guilty. And there's an assumption that because a court has found someone guilty, they're actually guilty. We observe guilty people, actual guilty people, walking away scot-free, no problems. Everything's withdrawn, dropped, whatever. And they're guilty, and they either have admitted it or there's smoking gun, whatever, but they walk free. So just imagine how many guilty people. And I've met a detective, former detective, who was fearful for his safety and his family's safety, who was coming forth, this is some years ago now, who was saying that more than 60% of people convicted of anything are actually innocent. Many people have gone, even in the United States, to death row. And these people who have lived out their lives and died in prison, a decade or two later, it comes out, oh yeah, these people were actually innocent. This is the reality. And if this type of injustice happens every day, then for people who are seeing, for example, bigger picture injustices happening, unfolding, for example, you don't have a chance. It's all these little injustices, and I've highlighted, for example, you don't even have to be incarcerated. There's innocent people being convicted every day who are not facing jail. Okay? And it's these little unheard of cases that set the precedent, set the stage, the foundation for bigger and bigger cases, to the point where it impacts injustices are being imposed, for example, on society as a whole. And for every innocent person, big case or small case, impacts society as a whole. The ripple effect. Anyway, just wanted to give you things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people say, when is it going to get easier? When you die.